We don't have time to wait for an international consensus on something as disastrous as climate change. We need to employ every single lever at our disposal. And frankly, that includes one of the most powerful levels we have, which is capitalism and consumer choice.
Impossible Foods creates plant-based alternatives to meat. Its first product, the Impossible Burger, closely approximates the look, texture, and taste of traditional ground beef by using some of the same molecules found in animal meat, but extracting them from plants instead. It debuted in July of 2016 and is now sold in roughly 17,000 restaurants worldwide. The company's chief communications officer, Rachel Konrad, says that Impossible Foods' mission is to help save the environment through innovation.
We have prioritized cows over every other living species. They require massive amount of land, water, and energy to produce a fairly trivial amount of high-quality protein. So we want to do it much more directly, take high-quality protein from plants and make it delicious and nutritious and sustainable.
You can buy Impossible products at Dunkin' Donuts, White Castle, Burger King, Whole Foods, Qdoba, Red Robin, and other restaurants. As of now, it's significantly more expensive than traditional meat, but Konrad says that will change.
The Impossible Burger uses about 80% less water, about 90% less energy, and about 95% less land. Okay, great. That's great by way of the environment. But that also means we don't need vast tracts of real estate for pasture land and slaughterhouses and transport. We don't need as much water, and we don't need as much energy. And so that actually, over the long term, pushes the cost for us and ultimately for the consumer down.
Konrad says Impossible Foods is introducing new meat products in order of their potential environmental and public health impact. The company's first priority was beef. But in January of 2020, the company announced at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas that it was adding two new products, Impossible Pork and Impossible Sausage. The company hasn't yet announced when they'll be available in stores.
Pigs are a disaster for public health. When you look at the strains of flu, the current problems with African swine fever, it's very clear that growing pigs for meat in these concentrated animal feeding lots are creating huge problems. Pigs consume a huge amount of the antibiotics in the whole world, which is a leading cause of the antibiotic resistance disaster that we are all facing. We need to really address the pig question from both a sustainability perspective and a public health perspective.
Konrad says that the Impossible Burger appeals not just to the social consciousness and health concerns of consumers, but to their taste buds.
About 95% of people who buy the Impossible Burger are regularly consuming animal-derived products, whether that's dairy, fish, chicken, or conventional burgers from cows. And we love that stat. We think that it's great. It really shows that we are penetrating the actual market of meat lovers.
Impossible Foods isn't the only company with the mission of creating more environmentally friendly alternatives to raising and slaughtering livestock. Others are attempting to grow meat in a laboratory and aiming to create whole cuts, not just ground meat. Konrad is skeptical that these ventures can be competitive in their pricing anytime soon.
We don't have time for $50,000 chicken nuggets. We have time to do something that is immediate and urgent and solves the biggest problem that humanity faces. You can do that by eating plant-based meat.
Do you foresee going into, let's say, like steak or whole fish?
Yeah.
Is that a different ballgame when it's not ground meat that you're talking about?
So yes and no. We definitely plan to go after those markets. There's no question that ground beef is the biggest sector of the beef market in America. It is obviously best known in the form of the classic American burger, but it's in all sorts of things from, chili to meatballs to tacos, right? So we wanted to go after that first.
Impossible Foods says its plant-based meat cooks and tastes like the real thing. The company's key innovation here is heme, the same protein that makes blood red, which allows its simulated meat to bleed and sear like a beef burger. Impossible Foods isolated the protein from soybeans and developed a genetic engineering process to manufacture it in bulk.
Impossible Foods is super proud of our genetic engineering. A lot of the value of the company, a lot of the intellectual property of the company comes from the fact that we use cutting-edge R&D, including genetic engineering, which is probably one of the most significant, important advances of the 20th century. Again, there's been thousands of meta-studies around genetic engineering. There is absolutely zero negative consequence to human health and well-being because of genetic engineering.
What would you say to people that are concerned about, let's say, the long-term impacts of GMOs that we can't measure yet, the alarmist concerns about using GMOs?
We haven't measured the negative implications of GMOs because there aren't any. We have tried. Again, show me some data that shows that these are somehow negative. The actual body of scientific literature on this shows that they are completely safe.
Meanwhile, the meat industry has been pushing for labeling laws that clarify that Impossible Foods products aren't the real thing, on the grounds that consumers might be confused about what they're actually buying.
That's obviously complete bullshit. Consumers are absolutely certain of what they're buying when they buy our product, which is why we've seen such stratospheric growth. They're really talking about how either meat or milk should be reserved for products that come from animals harvested from traditional livestock. I've breastfed my children. I know this is like way too much information for you, but according to the actual labeling laws that we're starting to see pitched in various states, I would actually have been serving my infants, breast beverage.
So basically something as unappealing to a consumer as possible.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, this is, again, it's all part and parcel of this idea that, man, incumbent industry, we know we're facing an existential threat. We can't fight them on the sustainability, on the taste, because, we are really rivaling animal products for taste. They are trying to fight us from a marketing and communications perspective, fighting by spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
And as you said, there's this whisper campaign, and there was an article published in a livestock industry publication that claimed that 4 Impossible Whoppers contained enough estrogen to grow boobs on a male.
Right, exactly.
So can you just respond to that claim and maybe any of the others that you've seen floating around?
The reality is that there is no estrogen in our product. This is all BS. There's sort of phytoestrogen from plants, but thousands of scientific studies show that that's totally healthy. And in fact, most Asian societies consume vastly more than we do. And not only are they totally safe, the men of Japan aren't growing boobs, but the reality is that they're living longer and they're healthier than we are.
A lot of environmental groups or climate action groups have explicitly embraced the idea that capitalism is at the root of all these problems and that it's sort of an evil system that needs to be toppled before we can do anything about that. You've explicitly taken sort of the opposite approach. So what would be your response to those types of arguments?
I would actually sideline that entire debate. The reality is that we don't have time to shift the economic system in the entire world in order to fix it, in order to then fix climate change. If governments and international protocols and consensuses could somehow be employed, awesome. That would be great. But I really do think that we need to leverage every single thing that we can. And I don't know if you're going to find a more powerful lever right now than capitalism and consumer demand and consumers' rational behavior.